So I find myself thinking about magic and whether I like a squishy description of magic or do I like quantifiable descriptions of magic. Do I like things that are defined to what I like to think a medium level of complexity? So anybody who knows me from my channel can probably answer that question already because it's the latter, not the former. I don't want it to be hero, um, hero and champions and things like that. No, I'm not looking for that. That's a little bit too complex for my taste. Though I will admit there is something to be said for cyberspace and um, what was the shoot? Did Hero put out a science fiction supplement, or am I thinking of something else? Maybe thinking of another system. I'm not sure, but there was a really complex science fiction system I can remember. But I can remember cyberspace, which was a complex cyberpunk setting, and there had something to be said for the level of detail they went to that. But it was a little too much for me. Um, it was a fun read. I wouldn't want to play it. I tried it. It was just too much. But I like a medium level of complexity. And what do I mean by that? Well, I'm currently reading 5th edition. I finally got myself around to tackling that. And I'm in the GM's guide. Okay, so I've looked at, or DM's guide, I should say, because it's Dungeons and Dragons. I might as well call it Dungeon Master, right? Um, and I read the player's handbook, and I haven't done a video on that yet. I will eventually. And I am now in the GM's guide, and they give the brief description of making magic items, of crafting magic items. It's like 4 or 5 paragraphs. That's it, like 1 or 2 charts, I think. I'm not, if I remember correctly. Might be 2. And I noticed that when I was reading the player's handbook, there are no item creation feats. There are a much smaller selection of feats. The feats also tend to be more powerful, as is the power curve has changed. So like instead of going a range of 1 to 5 when it comes to pluses, when it comes to, now it's 1 to 3. So a 1 has a little bit more oomph than it used to, and a 3 has more oomph than it used to. But there's not 3 used to be the middle, but now 2 is the middle. So 3 is more impressive now, I guess. And I thought that was a little weird. Then I got to the magic items themselves, and so that's what I'm currently reading. I love reading magic items. I always have. And there's nothing. There's just a little bit of flavor text telling you what the item does. There's no numbers, really. Nothing. I prefer the Pathfinder First Edition model. I want the formula for that item baked into the item. Now, I understand that there's a school of thought, and I can understand it. I used to be there myself, that every item should be impressive and important. But I like a little bit more industrial magic than I guess the standard D&D setting had back in first edition, and they seem to be kind of cleaving to that again with fifth edition. There's quite a few things in fifth edition which harken back to first edition. Not everything, but quite a few things. There's definitely an old school flavor to fifth edition that didn't exist, for example, in third edition, 3.5, and in Pathfinder first edition. Um, uh, there's a closing of the power curve. Everything is tighter in the system. But I don't like the squishy magic items. Yes, if somebody's going to find a magic item, you should have a little backstory for it, because now the magic items are supposed to be more impressive. They're supposed to be more bang for your buck. It's not just a +1 sword. But you can always do description. There was never, ever anything stopping any of us under any system from giving any magic item as much description and flavor as we wanted to. But I want to look at a system and know, okay, this magic item is made this, just like that. I want the formula written in the magic item. If I want to ignore it, I can. But I don't want to have to invent it. And there's the difference. I am not a ruling over rules dude. No, no, no. I want turnkey. I want something I can approach, and it's got every conceivable common aspect of the game covered. I'll take care of the corner cases. All right? I will judge all the things that aren't covered by the rules, no problem. But I want the rules to cover the normal, ordinary things that your character is probably going to encounter in their role as that class and is their role in a party dynamic. So I want all those bases covered, and then I will then ref the corner cases. Just like baseball and football have rules written down, and then they have refs that cover the things that aren't necessarily covered in those rule books at that moment in play. That's what I want to do. I will cover the corner cases, but anything I don't have to invent is weight off my shoulders. You are taking that off my plate and letting me do something else. I don't have to stop and invent a process for a magic item every time I encounter that. Because it means that I'm going to not do the same thing twice. And you're going to say, well, that makes perfect sense. It's a magic item. It shouldn't be doing the same thing twice. I have done that in the past, and there was only ever resentment. That caused more problems than stopping the game to look through a book and find something. So if I can avoid resentment and conflict, if I can avoid an argument or an argumentative state of mind from entering the game, that's what I want to do. So I want the magic system to be right there in front of me with every formula for every item. Now, if you don't want to use item creation feats, okay, I understand that. You're making it less industrial, and I can back off on my desire for industrial magic enough to accept that. You're making it a little more squishy. I could buy that, but I still want to know what is that item's recommendation for the level of the caster? What are the suggested spells or alchemical components or something that would go into that item? I want those described in the magic item itself. And it's up to me to add the flavor. For example, flame tongue. Somebody wants to make a flame tongue sword? Awesome. Go find yourself a tongue of something that's got a breath weapon. All right, yeah, the rest of the formula, it's going to come right out of the book. Literally, right out of the book. But you're going to have to get the weird component because you want a flame tongue. I'm going to make you go get a flame tongue. For real. That's the role-playing thing. That's what I, the GM, wants to do. Or DM in case, if you're going to run D&D. I don't want to have to invent it on the fly if I encounter something. But that's just me. I know that I am not, the only person who thinks that way, but I also realize that there are lots of folks that prefer it to be more squishy, more analog, less digital, if you want to put it that way. I like the precision of the digital when it comes to my magic items. I can appreciate the ambiance of analog, but I don't necessarily want ambiance every time I'm encountering a magic item. Because as much as we might like to think that every +1 sword is going to have a long backstory for it, the reality is a +1 sword is a +1 sword. It does the same thing as all the other +1 swords, regardless of how colorful the background is. Yes, they may have slightly different quirks. I can remember I had a character, in fact, it was Sir Lord Decan on my wall over there, my portrait of him. He used to carry a sword that when you drew it, a breeze blew. Had no effect on anything. It had no game effect. It would not even blow a candle. But you could feel a breeze when you drew it. That was cool. But other than that, it was a magic sword with a specific type of, bonus. And I don't remember what that is anymore. It was a long time ago. I should dig out his character sheet. I don't know where the hell I put it. It's very large. It might be behind me somewhere. Very large. I should probably go over that someday. It's absurd. But because back in first edition, we played superheroes. I liked that. I liked that aspect of the game. It was absurd and it was fun. And you could do that in third edition and in first edition Pathfinder. You could do it too. You could play superheroes. Absurdly high characters with absurd stats, and you crank up your skills to an absurd level. If somebody wants to concentrate themselves into one focus like that, let them. They're giving up a lot of other things. Fifth edition captured 20 on a stat. That feels constrained to me. That doesn't seem like the mountain. That just seems like a strong dude at the gym. The mountain does not have a 20 strength. The mountain goes well beyond that. You could emulate that first edition Pathfinder. You can't really do that under 5th edition. You cap at 20. That's it. That feels like we've lost something. And the fact that the magic items are harkening back to the earlier era when magic items were difficult to create. Each one had to be, you had to come up with a formula, you had to come up with some process. And it was very much that the magic items that we found in first edition D&D were the remnants of a golden era. That first edition and second edition, for that matter, it was very much a fantasy post-apocalyptic world. We can't do that anymore. That happened in the before times. Now all we can do is find these items. And there's a vibe there, and I understand it. I want things quantified more. And that's just me. All right, I rambled on long enough. So let's talk about what type of magic items do we want. Do you want really squishy, old school, revival kind of first edition D&D stuff where you have to come up with a scratch-built formula for every single time you want to make the same type of magic item? Or do you prefer the first edition Pathfinder where everything has a formula right in front of you? It's in the item's description, and then you, the GM, can decide to ignore it if you want, and you can add whatever flavor to that if you choose. But you don't have to reinvent it, particularly on the fly. I apologize if I've blown the speakers. I know that I have a problem with my mic. I did not have a solution yet. I have been trying to tone myself down. Sometimes it's hard. Alrighty, so let's talk about how we like our magic items. I like it industrial. I like it digital. Are you with me, or do you prefer more of the ambiance of the analog?